I will here in this last video present you articles recognizing and explaining GST within the scientific community. If you're interested in learning more, I'd recommend reading these PDFs that I am introducing to you here. Google the title of the PDFs and you should find them. Here's scientific articles and studies recognizing the thesis that racism is natural, indirectly by showing that who we allow to be our friends is very heritable, and that who we allow to be our friends is people who are genetically similar to ourselves, not only in phenotype but also in the more heritable components of behaviors. As a quick, rather irrelevant example of this, we have the behavior of drinking and alcoholism. An example of scientific articles recognizing that racism is a behavior with its origin in our evolution, and that it was / still is evolutionary beneficial. Here's a quick overview of how genetic similarity theory works. We are more prone to be more altruistic the genetically closer another person or group is to us, in a majority of cases. And likewise, we're also more prone to thus also be less hostile or suspicious of genetically more similar persons or groups. As explained before, culture is to genetic groups what safety gear is to the body and what the body is to the gene. There's protective measures ensured to preserve the genetic trait, and they are many, often layers upon layers, such as borders, as recognized by these articles. Notice that it's also on the increase. Let's continue to peel off some of the protective layers. It's not only protected by national borders, but also by culture within the nation.
All anyways, but a definition of borders, a shutting out of the enemy, protection. That was centuries ago. But how is that so different from our world now? Walking along this piece of human history, somehow it doesn't feel so distant.
Having said that, as illustrated by this picture, another protective layer is also technology, as a means to increase your health and life.
The desire to overcome death is nothing new. The Epic of Gilgamesh, the first recorded story of human history, accounts on clay tablets a mythical king's quest for immortality. 4,000 years later, humans are still searching for immortality. With the modernization of healthcare encouraged by biotechnology and computer science, remarkable gains have been made in extending human lifespans. A child born today can expect to live more than 3 times longer than in the time of Gilgamesh. Stem cells, caloric restriction, cryonics, nanotechnology, and transhumanism have become the watchwords of our era. Perhaps with the accumulation of these accelerating advancements, we are indeed on the verge of a complete reversal of the biological aging process, regenerative medicine in our lifetimes.
In actuality, the life of your genes, but likewise to keep genetic competitors at bay. There's another layer, and that layer is the house. Another layer is the safety gear you can carry within a house. Another layer is the body itself with its relatively thick skin and organs and bacteria inside of the body, defending the health and survival of the genes from outside threats.
Before a bacterium can infect body tissues, it must first gain entry. There are several non-specific defense mechanisms which help prevent this. The skin forms a physical barrier impermeable to many bacteria. This is further protected by acidic secretions which are toxic to some. Epithelial surfaces of the airways and digestive tract are another possible route of entry. They are washed by mucosal secretions, and low pH contributes to the protection of some mucosal surfaces. Throughout the body, non-pathogenic commensal organisms help block establishment of pathogens. There are three ways in which bacteria can infect the body adversely. They may invade the tissues and multiply, colonize the tissue surface and cause damage by releasing toxins into the tissues, or thirdly, they may do both, invade and release toxins. If these general defenses prove inadequate, other more specific mechanisms come into play. Take as an example of the first type, gonorrhoeae in the genitourinary tract. Normally bacteria are flushed out by the passage of urine. In order to attach to the epithelial surface, the bacillus must bind using some receptor. The body's cells attempt to preempt this by blocking those receptors. Immunoglobulin A is produced by B cells, which may be transported across the epithelium from the abluminal to the luminal surface. To do this, it first becomes bound to the poly-Ig receptor on the abluminal surface of the epithelial cell. The cell draws in the IgA bound to its receptor and forms a vesicle which migrates toward the external, luminal surface. At the luminal surface, the IgA is released by cleavage of the receptor and is secreted into the genitourinary tract. When the IgA encounters a bacterium, it can bind to its surface receptors. This prevents the bacterium from attaching to the epithelium, and it is washed away by the passing fluid. Another possible route of entry for bacteria is through broken skin. For example, C. tetani, the causative agent of tetanus. A bacterial colony could become established following a wound. The bacteria multiply and release toxins into the surrounding tissue. If the individual has been immunized against tetanus, tetanus-specific toxin immunoglobulin exists in serum. When it encounters the bacterial toxins, it binds and blocks the deleterious effect this toxin has on neuronal transmission. The bacterial colony will be phagocytosed in the same way as any bacillus within the body.
As you can see, it's very easy to look at the world with organisms who compete for survival as interacting circular layers, with the focus at the genes who are situated in the center. Here's a few more articles from the scientific community, indirectly acknowledging the thesis that racism is indeed natural, although they aren't as bluntly as I am, and instead uses more culturally sensitive words, less loaded words, synonyms like xenophobia, ethnocentrism, and the like to express the innate behavioral predisposition developed during our evolution. While the article flashes by, I'll in the meantime take a moment to state that the topic of GST alone easily could be turned into a long series of its own. Since I neither have the time nor the energy to go into it thoroughly, I hope I've at least been able to give you a vague idea of what it is. As stated in the beginning of this video, if you are interested in learning more, then please look for the PDFs presented in the beginning. On a somewhat unrelated note, I would again like to point out in this subcategory of this series that genetic similarity theory, or racism, is selfish. It's based on egoism, it's based on narcissism, as these articles points out, and it may boost one's confidence. The point with the subsection of GST is to show that the scientific community now acknowledges that racism indeed is innate. It's no longer merely a thesis by an individual or group of individuals outside the scientific community. It's now acknowledged by the scientific community.